Hey there, as a Latter-day Lights listener, I want to give you a very special gift today. My brand new book, Faith to Stay. This book is filled with inspiring stories, powerful discoveries, and even fresh insights to help strengthen your faith during the storms of life. So, if you're looking to be inspired, uplifted, and spiritually recharged, just visit faithtostay.com. Now, let's get back to the show. Hey everyone, I'm Scott Brandley.
And I'm Michael Slade. Every member has a story to share, one that will instill faith, invite hope, and inspire others.
On today's episode, we're going to learn how coping with a 30-year addiction is helping one couple better understand the power of the atonement and grow closer together. Welcome to Latter-day Lights. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Latter-day Lights. We're so glad you're here with us today. And we're really excited to introduce our special guests. We have two of them today, Cameron and Heather Berry. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Scott. Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you.
You bet. I also have a special co-host, a previous guest to Latter-day Lights, Michael Slade. Welcome. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the invite.
Cool. Well, this is going to be an interesting episode. We haven't had a lot of couples come on the show, but when we do, it's usually a pretty good experience. So why don't we just jump in and have you guys tell us a little bit about yourselves?
My name's Cameron Berry. Born in Houston, Texas, grew up in Florida, served an LDS mission in California, Oakland Mission, and then went to Virginia to go to school and met my wife.
Oh, in Virginia.
Yeah.
Yeah. I born and raised in California. We did not meet while he was on his mission.
Nope.
Different parts of the state. But I moved out after some work and school to Southern Virginia University, where he was currently living and working. And we quickly became really good friends and had a foundation of friendship that was really important to both of us. And how long were we? About a year and a couple months.
Yeah.
We didn't really date. We were just such good friends and both had separate confirmations from the Spirit that marriage was a logical and meaningful choice for us moving forward. And things moved pretty quickly once we figured that out. So we lived there for about a decade, had 4 of our children in Virginia. And then about a decade ago, we moved to Utah and had our 5th little caboose while we've been here. So 5 kids ranging from 18 to 5 and yeah, living life.
Awesome. Great. Well, welcome. We're glad you're here with us. I know your story spans a long period of time, and I'm interested to see how it's all going to come out. So why don't we turn the time over to you guys and tell us where your story begins?
Okay.
Should we start with Thanksgiving?
Yeah. Right after Thanksgiving in 2022, I went to show my wife a photo that I thought was really cute of my daughter wearing high heels.
She had pulled from my closet.
When I opened the photo reel, I didn't see it, but there was a pornographic photo in there as well. She did, and then that caught me, cold.
Both of us.
And though I tried to play it off pretty hard for about a day, it finally helped open me up. It turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me, period, in my life. It opened me up to be able to share with my wife an addiction that I'd had our entire marriage and also a good chunk of my life before we were married.
Yeah, it was not something that I ever expected. It's not so much that I thought he was immune to temptations. I've known it's a problem for so many people, but it was something that I didn't expect to not know was a problem because of our friendship. Like, we mentioned earlier, we were such good friends, best friends, and we talked about things. We weren't a couple that didn't talk. We talked often about, various subjects, deep discussions. We weren't people that avoided hard conversations. So what was so off-putting for me was that this person that I had trusted and believed would share, especially something like that, in light of our belief system and what we hold dear as far as our standards and way that we want to live. We agreed that, things like this were not something that we wanted to be part of our marriage or life. So to think that he wouldn't share that with me was just completely, it's like you're driving down the freeway 70 miles an hour and you hit a brick wall. And it was interesting because it really was a difficult thing. And maybe you can talk about that in a second, where he literally didn't know how to tell me. And so, he was struggling to share, and he, finding reasons why, that picture was there and, excuses really. And up until the moment he told me, and we're talking about probably a good 24 hours about.
Yeah.
I literally just it didn't enter my mind. That's how off-putting it was for me. And I just believed that I would have known about something like that. That wouldn't be something that could be hidden. And so for me, that moment felt like everything turned upside down. I didn't know what was real. I questioned our relationship altogether. Was this actually a real relationship? Is what you've told me true? Is who are you? Had a lot of, my mind was just reeling. It was a very difficult, challenging moment. And it was a Sunday morning, so we had church to go to that day. It was one of the most difficult moments of my life, I think. Didn't know what to think or feel.
Yeah. But what was really amazing about this whole experience, it's one of those things like you go through something super difficult. I don't know, you run a marathon, or you've had a bad illness, or maybe you threw your back out and just really thought you were never going to be able to sit straight again. You just have that kind of thing that you can think about in your past that is just so disorienting to your life and disruptive that you never want to happen again, but you can go back and you can see how perfect it was for you and how much it helped you to live better and to live just to know certain things much deeper. So for instance, a couple days after this all happened, we're now talking a lot, and kind of a little bit of my backstory to kind of help understand myself and kind of where I was coming from and what I didn't even know that I was dealing with, but I had for my whole life is I had grown up in a home that was very loving, but there was some turmoil, and I was the middle kid who was the pleaser, the one who was easy. I was the easy kid. And so I had learned at a very, very young age to hide. And usually I would mask any kind of any feelings and things that I thought might be disruptive. And so to me, it was just second nature. And there's a lot of these things I think we operate on, we just don't realize. And so then when it came to sexuality and pornography, that just became something I just would hide. And so what was really interesting and amazing is a couple days after this all happened, we sat down. I can still remember it was an evening and we were both sitting on the couch. The lights were kind of all off and we were just talking in the dark sort of. And I went from a switch that said to keep myself safe, I needed to hide, to keep myself safe, I needed to say everything. And I said everything. I kind of jokingly say it's like, if you remember the movie The Goonies, when Chunk is sitting down with the Fratellis and he's spilling his guts and he's just saying everything he doesn't have to say. Like I was basically that. I was just, crying and saying just everything I could think of. And I went to a space where of extreme radical honesty. And what that did emotionally to me was amazing. I don't think I'd ever felt that kind of freedom. At the same time, I was extremely uncomfortable. It was things I did not want to talk about. But I said everything. And then I just kind of made it a thing that after that, if I thought of something I didn't want to say, like, well, I'm going to say it, and it really has helped deepen our relationship. And it did it rapidly, very fast.
And it was interesting because while we did talk a lot, and while we were a couple that did communicate with one another, there was still, because of the hiding on his part, and then, and I'll talk a little bit more. I realized I had been hiding a lot as well. Nothing, not a serious transgression or anything like that, but just not being able to fully be myself. Intimacy. Yeah. Being known and being seen as you are, regardless of the bumps and bruises, the warts that we all wish weren't there and try to hide. And so it was a very strange experience because there was so much, I had felt the immense pain of betrayal. I had been lied to, but then there was this, he was showing me who he was and trusting me with things that I knew that were extremely uncomfortable and sensitive. And I just felt so very close to him. And so it was this like whiplash type feeling, because I would go in through the grieving. I would be walking through the grocery store, and it would, like, the thought would come that Cameron had lied to me. He'd been watching porn and lied to me for 18 years, almost 2 decades. And it would be like the first time I heard it, and I would be like trying to hold back tears. And then we would talk, and it would be just such this weird, like I said, whiplash of feeling super connected and close, but then grappling with grief and pain from just trying to make sense of how this all worked and what was actually going on. But it was like Cameron said, it was a very rapid growth process. And part of that too came from a decision that I made in the very early few days. I don't even know. Timeline is so blurry for me. I remember sitting on my bed, and it just hit me, like it poured over me, how many couples that I knew about personally or knew through others who had a situation such as this, and it ended in divorce. And, the person with the addiction didn't get better. And the other person had trouble forgiving or continued to be betrayed. And I just saw that, like, I thought about that happening to us, and it just scared me because I didn't want to lose my marriage. This is my best friend who I was really disappointed in and was hurt, but I also loved. And I reached out to a friend of mine who was also a coach, a life coach of sorts. And she worked with me, and the process that we worked on is something called belief breakthrough. And I was able to tap into a belief system and structure inside of myself that was causing me pain. Because in reality, Cameron's problem didn't mean anything about me. This was his problem. This was something that he was dealing with, and pornography happened to be the mechanism he used to soothe and to heal what he was trying to heal. And what that allowed me to do that day was to get out of my own way and to work towards healing, not just our marriage, but myself, because that's all I really had control over. And I just remember leaving that phone call with her that day feeling hopeful in a way that I was going to do everything in my power to be supportive and to help heal what was going on, and not heal him, because that's not possible for me to do, but heal myself, because I started to see areas in my own life where I had contributed to the breakdown in our marriage. There were things that I had done and ways I showed up that made it a lot easier for him to feel like he needed to hide this from me. Now, I'm not taking ownership, because he, his choice was to lie about it. His choice was to withhold that from me. And I want to be really clear, that wasn't my fault. But I also was not. So I'll share it in this way. Anytime we did have a conversation about things like this, found out that somebody we knew had been struggling with pornography addiction, we'd have a conversation about it. And it wouldn't be, I'd never approach him and say something like, how are you doing with that? Like in open curiosity, how are you handling that? I know there's traps all around. I mean, that's what it's for. It's meant to get as many people in as possible. I would approach it in saying something like, that's not your problem, is it? Or you don't struggle with that, do you? And it was never an open-ended question where he could feel comfortable, at least, or more comfortable. It's probably never comfortable to come and say, I'm actually struggling, or I have been struggling. It was, I was in such a place where that would have been an intolerable answer for me. And part of that came from unintended messages growing up. I remember sitting in young women's at church, and the warnings, make sure you're careful about that. And they're well-meaning warnings, but the message was, if you marry somebody with a pornography addiction, that'll destroy your marriage. So I like, if I married somebody with a pornography addiction, then it would destroy my marriage. So I couldn't have that answer. It was just like, it wasn't something I could tolerate. And so, Cameron talks about how this moment was a gift, as difficult as it was. But for me, it was also a gift because it caused me to confront inside of myself things that were broken and things that weren't allowing the atonement to really be applicable in my life, where I was closing out this opportunity to learn and grow and go through difficult things because of what it meant about me. I wasn't safe. So I got to learn a lot about myself and what drives me, safety, learning, that like a lot of things are a checklist to do right, get married in the temple, have children, do all these things. And I was focusing so much on keeping safe and transactional that I didn't know how to actually deal with life and the bumps that come along and embrace the gift of the atonement fully.
Yeah. And I think that's really beautiful. Like we had this strange thing happening where I did go to ARP and we did go to a therapist, but the therapist struggled to find things like we were running ahead of where he thought normally we would be in this process. And I think, as you can tell by how Heather's talking, what really just skyrocketed our healing so fast was that we both went to a space of not just truthfulness, but of responsibility. Like, one of the first things I even told Heather was like, there is no way this is any of your fault. Like, it didn't, like things were not always perfect. And like, there were times that our intimacy was not as strong as we wanted it to be, but that was never a good reason for my actions. And I think by both of us taking the strong stance of responsibility for where we could work on this and where we influence things to not be where they were, it just so rapidly, like a rocket ship, just brought us to much higher levels that I still feel like, I felt like our marriage was a good solid 8 or 9 before. And then we just kept hitting that level of 10 and 11 and keep going higher. And it keeps breaking that barrier now even.
We were living far beneath the privilege of marriage, especially eternal celestial marriage. And through this whole process, it's become really clear to me that, we have a lot of preparatory work that we do before we get married, especially in the temple for time and eternity. And a lot of it is guided, for us as we go through primary and Sunday school and through church and just all of those things. And as we go through the temple. But marriage is like this higher level education. And one of the things one of the lessons for me in this experience that's really been significant is that the reason why God gave us marriage, I think, is to help us heal. There's nothing quite like somebody else that you share a life with. And if you choose into real intimacy, to really let that other person inside and to see you and to move towards something eternal and greater, you are going to be confronted with the worst inside of yourself. And then what do you do with that? And for me, this really gave me an opportunity to see quite clearly all the ugly and unhealed and broken parts inside of me. And without it, like I just, people have all these reasons why marriage isn't important today, why it's not necessary. It's just a piece of paper, commitment is commitment. But it's just been such a testimony building experience to me of the power of marriage and what it does for us as individuals. It's not just this checkbox to be able to enter into the kingdom of heaven one day. It's something that you need to cultivate and build now. Otherwise, you will be severely lacking once we get to be with God again. And it's such a gift and privilege to have that opportunity here on this earth to grow.
Wow. That's some serious introspection on your side. You wouldn't think that, like, if when somebody would come out and your partner would come out and, say they've had this addiction, for you to actually have that introspection on your side, what am I doing that I could be doing better, right? Almost because of that, that situation. It's really interesting.
That's a tricky balance, right? Because like she's been careful to say, and we're always careful to share. My actions were not her fault. What I did was what I wasn't responsible for, and we've done a lot of like mindset work and stuff like that before, and that was also very helpful and a nice foundation for this whole process, because we could immediately go back to some of these teachings we've learned, and that really is one of the core things you really need to. Most of us have a struggle with. It's like when you ask your kids to like clean up the room, they're going to turn over to their other brother and sister and start bossing them to start first. Like, why? Like they have two hands and they're ready to go. We can deal with them, but it's just a human condition. We're very conditioned in this manner to wonder how to try to fix somebody else to fix us. And by just having that core mindset that we're the one that's the agent of change in our life. When something like this came up, it was nice to be able to fall back on that and realize, okay, where can I stand on this? Where can I make something better and influence my future in something that is more beneficial?
And it wasn't necessarily a very neat and tidy process.
Oh, no.
We're talking about it now 2.5 years past the moment. And I had plenty of moments where I wanted to fix him and I was going to fix the problem. And, and that looked a lot like, okay, what programs can we put on your phone? And just like accountability. He like for a long period,
Police.
you put like, we slept with his phone underneath my side of the mattress. So if we had to go get it at night, like, and I think that was even your idea, but it was things like that, things that were like to control the situation that helped me feel more comfortable. But the more work we did and the longer that we really dug into the principles of truth, not just these things that we try to do to feel better, the safety came from within me, not anything he could do, because the reality is, he had already figured out a way, and we weren't a couple that. He didn't travel a lot. I didn't travel tons. We were together most evenings. We slept in the same room. Like the opportunity, I didn't think there was much space for opportunity. And so reality is, if he wants to hide something or do something, he's going to figure that out. There's nothing I can do. There's nothing that, any rule I could put in place that was going to protect him and me from this happening again. It was really, can I become the kind of person that can tolerate disappointment, setbacks, frustration, hurt, and still show up in the way that I can live in integrity with myself. And I'm still on that journey. I have weak moments where, it's interesting what happens with fear and anger and why they're tools of the devil, because the moment those feelings are there, my ability to see and expand the space between stimulus and response goes away. Like it's like it shortens drastically when fear or anger are there. But when I have peace, when I can bring the Spirit into my life and I'm settled on a foundation of Christ and the atonement, that space between stimulus and response gets wider, and I get to choose how I want to show up in those moments. And so anger and fear are just, nothing good ever comes from those being the triggers, where we try and solve a problem. And, I've been through that. I've had moments where I was just so angry and shaking, like so mad about everything. But thankfully I had a foundation of understanding those principles. So when that moment passed, I could reclaim my peace again, and I could step back on solid foundation. But fear and anger are some powerful tools of the devil.
Yeah. And so are shame. Yeah.
What about communication? How has communication been a part of this process?
Well, we talked. I definitely went through some, it sounds so crazy, but it really was PTSD type responses. Like I would wake up in the morning and I could not go to sleep, like 3 a.m. And I lost my appetite, and it was just it was such an extreme, just shock to my system. And so I tried not to wake him up because, I knew he had to go to work. And, but he decided to get up with me when he noticed that I was awake, and we would just sit and talk for hours. I mean, sometimes we would be talking for hours and hours before he even went to work. And then in the evening we would talk again. And it was, I'm quite sure that wasn't your favorite thing in the world to do. But I had questions, and I needed to make sense of what I thought I understood and what was real. And so the communication, I think, was like Cameron was saying earlier, his choice into radical honesty. And I played the game too. I realized that I had I would, like I said before, it wasn't anything major that I needed to disclose that was something wrong I had done. It was more well, that's an embarrassing memory. I just don't need to ever bring that up, right? We all have those moments in life. And, he was playing that game of, we called it, I don't want to tell you, but But I will. And so I would do the same. And it became something that we both, I think it was helpful, and you can speak to that for yourself, but that he wasn't going through it alone. He wasn't going through all the awkward, because it had been decades of lies. It wasn't all at once, you just don't remember things, and something would come up and he'd be like, I think I should say that. And so we just created space for that. And it wasn't always perfect. And sometimes I got hurt and sometimes I got angry, but then we were able to regroup, and he was very patient through all of that and never threw it back in my face. He was very understanding. And I really appreciated that. Yeah. Not all couples deal with that. A lot of times, I've delved into the marriage and family dynamics with this type of disclosure and deception and whatnot. And oftentimes there's defensiveness that comes up for the person that's lied, because it's hard, it's difficult, and they want to, I'm not all bad. And, and gosh, I went through moments where I questioned, are you all bad? And that has to be so hard. I understand the defensiveness that can come up, but he never did that. He just allowed me to process and to ask questions. And that was exceptionally helpful for me.
Yeah. And I think
That's
that
awesome.
really grappling with what shame is and how it's operated in our life was one of the big aspects of this whole thing, is that shame, thrives in private and in the dark. And so that was a big motivating factor for me not to talk. And so being so open and being so honest, just so brutally honest, was a way of just kind of just shattering that whole shame bubble. And her, holding space for that, which was not always easy, was really crucial. So it was just an amazing combination that, like I said, that even though that moment that day, with that photo could be seen as like a horrible day of my life. And it's not something I want to relive, that's for sure. It was definitely the most amazing day of my life, because since then it's just the amount of freedom I feel. There were strange like knock-on effects too. Like I can now fall asleep in like a minute flat. And I didn't even think about that. There was subtle anxiety I've been carrying forever, that to the point that I didn't understand that I was carrying it. I didn't think about it. It was just there. And so then have that just be gone so quickly. I can just sleep, just like I can just lay down, close my eyes, and I'm done, and anyways, yeah, it's been amazing and difficult. And sometimes the path still feels difficult, but I can see now how I can truly testify of the atonement. When they say your sins be as scarlet, but they can be as white as snow, that feels like a platitude until you really experienced just coming to grips with the scarlet in your life and working at it and actually letting it all out in a way that there really is nothing left. I do feel like they are as white as snow.
Well, for me, I had, for whatever reason, no one ever taught me to be this way, but I've heard others, I know I'm not alone. I was very much, because I was born and raised in the gospel. There was this, it's like, if I have the answer, if I know what's right, then there's really not a whole lot of excuse for me to do what's wrong. And so I think I held myself to a standard that is a little unrealistic, but also wasn't really healthy for me, because if it was almost like I needed to earn God's love. And so I didn't quite understand that he could meet me. Like I logically knew that the atonement was for me, was for everybody, but it was like, but better. So you've got to really get your act together to be perfect before God's like going to be okay with you, really. And we tell ourselves these stories, and we're not even necessarily conscious of them, because I knew what was true, but I was living as if, I have to earn God's love and be perfect before I can have it. And that was true. And so I really struggled in the very beginning. One of the people I was angry at was God. I felt like I had, I'd done the right things, the check boxes, right? I'd done all the things I was supposed to do to be a righteous person and to do my best, even though I wasn't perfect. And I'm like, I understand Cameron, in human weakness, he couldn't tell me. I could wrap my mind around how scary that must have been. And, and his whole time he was trying to fix it by himself, and it wasn't ever going to work. But I could understand that. But from my perspective, I'm like, God, you knew. I'm sitting here thinking I'm married to somebody that's honoring the promises that we've made and the understanding that we have and the covenants with God. And you could have told me. You could have shown me so much earlier. I mean, that I do believe that God put that picture or allowed that picture to be there that day because it was time. But I'm like, if he could do it then, why didn't he do it before? Why did I have to wait 18 years? And I felt embarrassed. It felt so like, I just felt like a fool, and God was part of that. But at the same time, I knew I needed God. I knew I needed his peace and his comfort. And so I'm praying for that, but I'm angry at the same time. And it was really a difficult space of time for me where I really struggled to feel the Spirit. I would have it in spurts. I remember specifically one time where it was a rough morning. I had dropped Cameron off at work and I was traveling over to my office for that day. And I don't think I was praying, but all of a sudden I just felt an intense, like I knew that my grandmother, who had passed away when I was in 5th grade, was in the car with me. And I didn't know how to explain it, but I actually said, "Are you there?" Like I said it out loud. I'm like, are you there? And I just knew it. I knew she was there. And I knew that she was there to just comfort me and tell me that she loved me. Because I felt so I felt really like betrayed and left alone. And then Cameron was having at the same time these profound like spiritual experiences of forgiveness and like, the atonement working in his life and his freedom. And he felt so good. And here I was like, who hadn't done anything wrong, hadn't done something like that. And I was struggling to feel the Spirit and struggling to feel okay. And now in hindsight, I look back and I'm like, God loved me so much that he sent my grandma because I could accept that. And she was there for just a little bit. I didn't hear any words. I just felt her there, and I knew she was there, and I knew she knew and she loved me, and I was being supported that day. And I struggled for a good while. But it was interesting. I teach primary, and I wasn't expecting it this day, but we were finishing a lesson, and I was going to ask the children what song they loved and they wanted to sing, and I was going to find it on my iPad and do the music. And the children asked for the song Risen by Shawna Edwards. But there was a point in it where, and I don't know, I still don't fully understand why, but this is what like just kickstarted me back into feeling God's love for me directly from him. And it's a quote in there. It says, to bind up every broken heart, to conquer death and sin. And it's the whole song is about the Savior and his life. And for some reason, I realized like that atonement that healed my husband was also the atonement to bind up my broken heart. And it didn't separate him from me. And I'm trying to put words to feelings that I don't know if I have exactly, but, it didn't separate from him, but it bound us together through Christ's love for us, that he came to conquer sin and our broken hearts. And I just felt his love wash over me. And I felt the Savior. And I will put that song on now anytime I just want to feel close, and it immediately comes back. And I would sometimes just listen to it on repeat because it was a sure way to feel God's love for me. And I know that he loves us and that he is desperately trying to reach us and to help us. There's an image of a lamb. It's a painting. And then there's Christ in the background. And he's not in focus, but he's like running towards that lost sheep. And I heard in a recent class that I was in, the meaning that this had for somebody about this person has somebody who's dealing with addiction and fear, for that person in their life that's lost and hurting, and that they can let go. Because so many of the times, like we have people in our lives that we try to save and we can't. It can never be us, and that it's okay to let go because Christ has them, and Christ is charging towards them, just like that picture of the Savior rescuing the lamb. And what hit me was that I'm also being charged for, just like that. Just as the person who's struggling with sin, in my pain, I'm being charged for too. I'm being rescued, because there is a big part of me that's like, how do I protect myself from getting hurt again? And I really, I wrestled with that, because that made me want to control my situation. But this reminder that I don't have to worry about protecting me. I mean, I get to be smart and make wise decisions and pray and ask for a personal revelation because we do have responsibility for ourselves. But I'm talking about the kind of like, how do I make sure Cameron doesn't hurt me again? And I can never do that. But I know that Christ is racing for him, and Christ is racing for me. And I think that was so meaningful for me. That's, I think I had that faith with Cameron before, that Christ cared and was going after him. But I'm like, he's also fiercely coming for me. And so even if something happens that hurts again, he's there and he's coming for me, and I'm not alone. And he's there to save and help me and to support me and love me and carry me through. And those are just, this has been a powerful experience in understanding the atonement in very different ways than I had ever had to understand it before.
Wow. Cameron, your thoughts on the atonement?
Yeah. Heather mentioned I had some pretty cool spiritual experiences. I'll just mention one, probably the most powerful one that I had. And so I actually have this reminder on my phone that I have had on my phone for many years, actually, to remind me to have like a good prayer, to talk with Heavenly Father, and I even on the reminder said, I wanted to have make sure I pray for courage and for the ability to do things I need to do. And it's interesting now that I look back at old journal entries and things like that, I can see how I was constantly reaching out to grapple with this problem, and that I really wanted to be done. I never felt abandoned by God. I didn't have that experience. That just wasn't my experience. I did feel like I was confused. I felt like I didn't understand the reason for the trial. I didn't understand the reason for how things were shaking out, and I felt maybe if I was broken, it was definitely, I felt that it was my fault. And so then it was like, well, what do I do now? And so I felt very stuck. But so I had this reminder, and I would every day when I saw the reminder, if I hadn't prayed already, I would stop whatever I was doing, and I would start to pray. And it was very standard, and it was, Dear Heavenly Father, and thank you for this, and please forgive me for that. And this one morning, a few days after this
within that first week.
It was the first week. Yeah, it was in the first week. I was at work, and the reminder came up, and then so I was just like, okay, kind of stopped what I was doing, and started to say the prayer. And as soon as I said, please forgive me, I did not have time to say anything else. I felt an amazing warmth and rush of feeling that like seized me. I remember my mouth gaping open because for the first few seconds, I didn't understand what was happening. And then when I had the realization of like, because I didn't even get to finish the sentence, I said, please forgive me. That's all I said. And normally, that was dot, dot, dot. That was mid-sentence. And, I remember just when I finally realized that I was feeling a feeling of what I believe was forgiveness, like I just was extremely overwhelmed. And then I also had, I do remember having a thought soon after that, like, well, I don't know if I can tell Heather this, because like she's still in this part of like me, like saying, telling her all these stuff that I'm doing, and like trying to be all honest, and, oh, it's okay, Heather, I'm forgiven. God told me you can just, it's all good now, so I had that moment of like, well, I am telling truth, so I'm going to tell her this, but at the same time, how do I tell her in a way that doesn't feel like I'm obligating her to just not be mad or not continue with, any of her feelings and deal with those things in certain ways. So anyways, it was a funny moment in that experience. It was complicated happiness is what we sometimes call that. And, anyways, it was amazing. And, still to this day, when I talk about it, I can still feel it. I feel it now. I feel that feeling again. And, it was at that moment that I started really contemplating, how much I don't think I really understood the atonement. I understood it cerebrally. I understood it maybe in smaller ways, but to actually get to grapple with it in such a powerful way, really gave me a testimony that you really can be completely healed. I have not relapsed in those 2.5 years since she saw that photo. And my feelings on the matter are different. It's not that there's pushes and pulls that aren't still there. They're still there. Mm-hmm. You've created neural pathways that could easily be traveled again. But the feeling of healing was so absolute and so quick. And Heather and I have talked a lot about this. I struggled with thinking, how am I going to share this with people who have different experiences, who just, sometimes it takes them 10 years. Sometimes they're just still struggling with it, and they've been open and honest forever, and is there possibilities of still relapse? Yes, but I don't feel that that's my path. But I also don't want to be naive in thinking that things like that just simply can never happen again.
It doesn't mean you drop the safeguards and the personal commitments. It's
right.
just-
Safeguards and personal commitments. I keep them in place. And also, Heather and I, and especially lately, we talk a lot about this, of just how we didn't realize how we weren't acting very agentically in our life. I was trying to not hurt her, but really what I was doing was just trying to hide and not hurt myself. That was really the actual reason why I wasn't doing that. And her reason to be safe wasn't to help our family. It was more actually to protect herself. Yeah. And like just grappling with those like hidden things that we were doing, and actually understanding that we have abilities to make choices. I certainly have no desire for divorce. She's expressed that same thing. But to say that was off the books, we understand that that's not just everybody's path, and that's okay. And like just recognizing that things are just different for everyone and how it shows up. But I can just say the atonement is just so much more a living example in my life. Something that is so much more powerful than I realized. Sometimes we I think we're in the what do you want to call it? We're in the country club rather than in the hospital. Being that the church really is the hospital. We're either the patient or we're the doctor helping, But we really shouldn't be in the country club where we're there because we think we're paying a due and we were owed some things, and we're trying to keep up appearances to the people around us who also are the Joneses, that doing this and that. And I think I didn't realize how much of the country club I had been. I didn't think I was. And it was amazing to be able to move through that into a new space.
Wow. Michael, do you have any thoughts on this?
No, I'm just really impressed on the experience, and just grateful I have the opportunity to share this with you, or to be shared with me.
Yeah, it takes a lot of courage to get on and share this experience. What was that? How did you feel when you decided to do that, to share it publicly?
Oh,
well, it was interesting early on when we realized that we were healing, and not just like, we weren't just struggling and upset and muddling through, like we were actually feeling like we had leveled up and were happier, even though there were some really hard times. And we just felt like we were figuring something out that we couldn't quite put a finger on just yet, but that if we could figure this out, then there was something we could share with others, because it's too rampant in our world today. This is, Cameron felt, he knew that there were problems, but it's very lonely. You feel like you're the only one that's dealing with this. You sit in church on Sunday and it's like, yeah, I'm the one that's the gross person, or whatever name. I don't want to put labels on it, but you said yourself that you had like, I'm a monster. And as we counseled with our bishop and talked about it, like, this is a huge, huge problem in the world, but more specifically in our faith. I think it's not just our faith, but any religious community where you have these morals and standards, and then you throw in something like pornography that's meant to entice and entrap you. It is meant to be tempting because of how God created us to be. Like, sexuality is a good thing. And Satan just uses these pulls to get us to act outside of our integrity. And then you throw shame in, because now I've sinned, now I've done something wrong, now I'm not worthy. And the messaging, that Satan twists, like these truths that he just twists so that you feel trapped and you feel bad and you feel like, you're the scum of the earth. It's just a rampant problem, especially for our young people. And so when we realized that there was hope, and that there was healing, and that people didn't have to suffer and hurt and live with this and just tolerate subpar, or staying in an addiction, or staying miserable and unhappy because you've been hurt. Like, how can we share this? How can we help others with this? And I remember, I think we were just laying in bed one day. I'm like, I think I said it out loud. I'm like, we should write a book. Like, this is something that we need to share, but we didn't know what it looked like yet. And then you had an experience in Arizona where you were sharing it publicly for the first time.
Oh yeah. Like just know about me. This is not me. I like, again, being a hider. I'm also kind of a aloof person. I'm perfectly warm and kind person to talk to and a good friend, but I'm not very outgoing. I'm introverted and this talking about this, especially at first, was extremely uncomfortable and difficult because the core of me was so used to just like, you didn't see that. I had a mask that you just didn't see. And so, we were at a little conference that we did with the mindset stuff we were doing. And I decided to just tell a group of people. And these were all people who were, some knew me pretty well, some didn't. But anyways, I explained our situation, and I also explained the joy and the freedom of having been able to be this free, and doing that was very helpful to help kind of break that mold and help me recognize, because especially like Heather said, like it's just so rampant, like it feels like there's very few people, if any, that aren't touched by it in some way, and we weren't seeing a lot of stories exactly like ours. And I think even if your situation is different, there were a lot of things that we could help with. And at least even if it's just hearing our story might help inspire you to be something different, or to pick a different path, or to try to pick up where you are right now and do something different. I wanted to be a part of that, and I could feel that. So yeah,
what advice would you give to a couple that maybe was at that stage where you were at 2.5 years ago, just finding this out and just trying to get through that beginning difficult disclosure? What advice would you give a couple that's going through that?
I would say that the first thing I would hope they could feel, at least, is that life can begin right now. I think there's so many times in our life that you can look back and see this. If you have children, you know that. Like it feels like you just never lived your life without children. Like you couldn't imagine these spirits and these personalities not to be in your life anymore. So it feels like life started back then. So a lot of times I think back to it feels like my life started at marriage, right? Like I can't imagine not being with her. I can feel now again that same feeling of things starting again. You really can pick up exactly where you are now. I don't care how far down, how difficult you're feeling things. You can have a new life now.
I've heard it described, when you find out something like this, or there's deception on some level, that marriage is over. And it doesn't mean divorce. It just means that marriage that you thought you had, that you were building based on the understanding that you had, is gone, and it is gone forever. So you can walk away, or you can build a new one.
And it takes a reframing to understand, like you said, that the marriage is gone, but it's something different and new. It's metamorphosized into the butterfly that was a caterpillar before.
I think a piece of advice is it's so easy to go into regret. What if it just didn't happen this way? What if Cameron had just told me when we were engaged and I knew the whole time? Like then I could at least not have been lied to. And we want to go back to like the what ifs, and there's no what if that will ever make those things come true. What is, and coming to terms with that and looking forward with hope and looking to create something, looking at the opposition as an opportunity and not something that, is hurting you, something for an opportunity to grow and become better and to become more refined. I think that would be my advice, is to try and look forward with hope and to not try and look to the past, but what can you build now? And I think too, being a safe space as best you can. It isn't easy. And I wasn't always a safe space. I had my moments, but I tried really hard to understand, to ask questions, to understand. So I could have more empathy for where he was coming from. And then looking inward, where have I contributed to dysfunction in our marriage? Where have I played a part in what's going on right now? And how am I playing a part in am I helping with his recovery and healing, or am I tearing it apart because I don't know how to manage myself? And so, I it is one of the hardest things in the world to know that somebody you love and trusted. And like, I literally, this was in the very beginning, I said, if someone had pointed a gun at my head and said, is your husband doing this? I would have, if you're wrong, I'm like, I would have felt super confident saying, nope, that's not a problem for us. And I know that. And it's like I said before, it's whiplash and it's hard. And I don't mean to make it, to simplify it in any way whatsoever, but to vilify the person that you care about, if you want it to work, if you want your marriage to be healed, if you don't want to give up, to turn the other person into a villain and wait for them to make everything right again is not a good way to proceed. To focus on your own healing and how you can become a more supportive, loving partner to walk with somebody through a very hard thing, and do your best to not make this be about you, because it isn't. It never is. I could have been, women go through all of the emotions of, if I were prettier, if I were skinnier, if I were younger, whatever it is, he could be married to that person, that thing you think if you were, and it would still be a problem because it's not about you. It's about them trying to fix something that's wrong inside of themselves. And so to do your best to identify the meaning you're putting on someone else's action. What does it mean about you? And to figure out, to really study that and to put light on it, to shed light on that so that you can remember what's actually true, because these are just lies that we tell ourselves.
Yeah. And I think kind of like just a summary, I think now that I'm thinking about it, the two things I would really, really tell somebody who's just beginning this process and struggling is to do your best to remove shame, and second, take full responsibility, personal responsibility. And we called it the principle of irregardless. Like again, if I took that I decided to take that challenge, I decided it myself to say, if I felt something, if I remembered something that was difficult that I didn't want to say, I was going to say it. But that was because I decided to take that responsibility. And I also said I could not, in my mind, I could not wait till she was safe. Like, there's couth, right? Like there is proper space that you need to do, but at the same time, whether or not she was okay with it, like I had to take that stand and just say, no, she deserves the truth, all of it.
And you deserve healing too, not to be hung up because I can't tolerate the truth. Yeah.
And so taking away the shame and really working with full responsibility, not trying to control somebody else or to manipulate them to make sure that you felt safe, it really was important. Taking those two things into account.
Hey, wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
This has been incredible. There's so much wisdom, so much insight, inspiration that I've just felt from you guys and hearing your experience. I did not see this coming from what I thought we were going to get on the podcast. It's incredible.
Thank you.
It is incredible that you've been able to learn these lessons and through such a difficult trial. And it's truly inspiring. Thank you for being willing to share it. I honestly feel like this is going to help a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it almost feels like this is the beginning of your journey. Like this is something you could continue to do to help people in the future as well.
I hope so. Yes.
That's our hope. We, oh gosh, it's been almost 2 years ago. No, not quite. But we started a podcast where we shared our story. And literally it's just us in the car because we've got a busy life, and we were both, the days that I would travel over and commute with him to work, we would just record our story and talk about these principles in the car. So we've started, but you're right. Like, this really is the beginning of something, that I don't think we even understand what it is yet, but but there's a world of people hurting and feeling really alone and stuck. And if we can help them feel less alone and share the principles that helped us find healing, I know that marriages can be saved and families can be preserved. And the whole purpose, I mean, this really is a gift. Like, life is a gift. It's not, I think so much of the time we think that if I just live righteously enough, then bad things won't happen and that's success. And it's like, no, we're here to learn. We're here to learn and grow. And that includes the trials and hardships that, like, sometimes we just don't want to have to accept or deal with. I know I personally have struggled with that. Can I just be righteous enough to have certain things not happen? But if we can turn those things around and make them, it will be so much more worth the pain and struggle if something we do or say can help somebody else. And a family can be preserved, especially when both people desperately want it and they just don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
We're ready for a final thought. I actually did have something, Scott.
Okay. Yeah. This is kind of the point in the show where we ask you if you have any final thoughts. And Michael, I mean, if you have anything to share too, like, you're welcome to share too.
You know what I one of the biggest things that I've learned from this, that every time I pray about what do I share with people, it keeps coming back to this, and that if we believe in a plan. The Heavenly Father has a plan for us, right? We believe in that. We also believe in a malevolent force that knows this plan. And if I was this malevolent force, I would pick the most important things in this plan to mess with. And sexuality is messed with, probably one of the hardest things in this planet. We know that. You can see it. It's obvious. And so whatever I pray about what to share with people, I just keep feeling how to express to people how amazing, beautiful, and wonderful sexuality is. And I think we're living beneath it, to be honest, in every direction. And one of the things, be able to be so open with Heather and I, we've really reconnected in ways sexually even that have just been just really amazing, and seen how healing and beautiful this very sacred act is between man and wife. And I really want to share that with the world, is just that this is amazing. This is beautiful and wonderful, and it should be something that we have in our lives. And if we can manage it, it can be a crowning glory in this relationship that we have in marriage.
No, I agree. It's a very sensitive subject. I think because, like Cameron said, it's been Satan has really meddled with it, and it's become a vice and it's something to come between husband and wife. It's been misused in such hurtful ways, but you know, I can testify to what he's saying, that when we look for God's purpose and meaning in giving us gifts like this, the reward is so rich and such a blessing. God gave us the gift of sexuality not to divide us, which is often what happens inside of marriage, but to unify us and to make us stronger. And I think it's a glimpse of eternity. I think it's a glimpse of something powerful. I mean, it's the only godlike power we have here with procreation, right? And I think he's giving us this small little glimpse of what it's like to be like him. And it's a powerful gift. And we see how, because it has a powerful way to destroy when used inappropriately, and a powerful way to build and create life. And not just with, having children and birth and all those things, but to create life and energy in your relationship and just in your way of, it's just so expanding for a couple. And I think it's like, I think God says that's why it's so important that it remains inside of the bounds of marriage, because it's this incredible tool that God's given us. And if it's misused, it can really cause problems. And so It's one of those things that I know, as being on the other side of it, where it was hard for me. It was not something I felt was a gift. It was something that was difficult, because just for all the meanings that we place behind these things, but to have come to the other side and to see the beautiful gift that it is. I just know that if couples can work towards that and put aside the meanings that we've put on sex and look at it as something that's helping us become more like our Father in heaven, and to use to help us be one, in mind and heart and purpose. The rewards of it are above and beyond what we even understand. And I'm not even going to say we understand these things. We're still learning, and we're just understanding the importance of it. But it's incredible.
Yeah.
And not a surprise that Satan attacks it the way that he does.
And it just feels like we keep getting like 10 warnings to one hallelujah. And so what I feel like is I want more hallelujah.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Wow. This has been awesome.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you again for being on the show. Any final thought? Is that any last things you want to say?
Just that, we prepared a little, like PDF, just a little tool, a process that Cameron and I have both used and was refined really through this process of helping to identify, the things that are keeping us stuck, the thoughts, the beliefs that are inside of our, the meanings that we're placing on things that trip us up, and how to walk through it and remember what's true. A lot of these things just kind of go under the surface. They're unconscious. We don't realize we're doing them, but to put consciousness to them, to see them, to shed light on some of the lies that we're telling ourselves, and to remember who we are, because we are divine children of God. We are here for a purpose, and he loves us, and he knows us by name. And if we can remember who we are, we can do a whole lot better while we're here. And so this PDF is just a few pages that there's a journal page, and it walks you through like a 5-step little exercise that will help shed light and truth on some darkness when you're struggling. And so we'll send you the link to access that. And it's just something we wanted to share that's been very meaningful and helpful to us.
Yeah. It's one of those things that we realized that there's a lot of ways to try to cope with feelings in our life, but this was a really cool tool to kind of help you find where are those feelings coming from. And like I said before, when I was young, I didn't realize how much I was masking. And this type of tool we've used that's helped me kind of go back to those memories and say, oh yeah, that's kind of where I was starting to make these beliefs, and then help me work on them. So yeah, it's an amazing tool.
Awesome. How did you come up with it?
I'm a coach. I've trained for the past nearly decade in helping people walk through processes similar to this. So I'm certified in a technique called belief breakthrough. And as I studied my own breakthroughs and what really helped me feel the full power of the atonement, to learn the lessons that I needed to learn, I was able to refine the process to help it be something that was something that would help really stick and help you remember who you are a little bit more powerfully. And so it's basically a baby that's been formulating for the past decade, and that I've been practicing myself and with my clients. And in this process that Cameron and I have gone through over the past several years has really helped to refine it. And so it's one, we're right now in the process of writing a book to go more in depth about it. So we're hoping to get that released before the end of the year. But it's been just something that we've practiced and experienced for ourselves, and have just studied and it's just morphed as we've had life experience. And honestly, it's a gift from God, and none of it it's not ours. These are principles and truths that God has given us. And so we were just we're the organizers a little bit into something that's concrete that we can just walk ourselves through or help somebody else through.
That's awesome. And it feels like a book is necessary. I can totally see it. I mean, even just from the things you've shared here, and I'm sure this is just a piece of all of the wisdom and insights that you've put together. So I'm excited. When you launch your book, reach back out. We'll have you back on the podcast.
Oh, cool. We will.
Thing.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Michael, any last thoughts or comments?
I talk to a lot of my clients and just say that this trials in their life could be a speed bump or a roadblock, and that ultimately it's their decision.
Yep. It is.
So which one of those things is it going to be?
That's the real power that we have.
And good for you guys for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, when I was a bishop, I called it you can hit a pothole, or you can go into a canyon. It's way easier to get out of a pothole than out of a canyon.
That is for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So awesome. Thanks again, guys, for being on. We really appreciate it. And thanks, Michael, for coming and hanging out as my co-host. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Hopefully you've got some really good insight and inspiration from Cameron and Heather today. And if you know anyone that is struggling with pornography or anything like this, this is a great podcast to be able to share with them. Go hit that share button, do your 5-second missionary work, and let's save some marriages. Let's bring some people closer together through a difficult thing rather than have it separate.
Yes.
And if you have a story that you'd like to share, go to latterdaylights.com. Let's have you on the show. And thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next week for another episode of Latter Day Lights. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.